Hello and welcome to another SkepticTV. Today's host is yours truly, Blue Juggernaut. Sorry, I had a bit of an echo there. And today's topic is about quality of evidence. Today's speakers include Kitch.
Hey, hey.
Yoshimo.
Hello.
CS Bear.
Hello, everyone.
Angry Womble.
Ow!
Lafayette, if he's here. Is he
He's
here?
not. No.
He's falling
Dutch
asleep.
Liam.
Guten Tag, Leute.
Is Colin Mason here? Nope.
Colin
Believe me.
Tech.
They can't hear me, you idiot.
You idiot, Blue.
Continue.
Have we got any news, anyone?
Hey, you didn't introduce Gleamy.
I did.
No, you didn't introduce our special guest, who's going to give us some input on things relating to the show topic.
Why you gotta
Well,
feel
me.
Introduce our guest.
Me?
Yeah.
I did. I
Okay,
said
good,
Gleam me.
good. Shall I start with the news then?
Yes, please.
Okay, right. First news thing is, as some people may or may not be aware of, depends whether or not you've been watching some of the stuff I've been putting out on my channel, because I have started doing some videos. There is a chap called Dathan, which has some very interesting ideas, and the next show will be used as to attempt to debate. I can't
Oh,
help it,
no.
it's my crappy connection. Yeah.
Oh
And
crap, we're losing Womble.
I expect Falchion to romp him completely, and if Dathan doesn't show up, we're just going to have an interesting chit-chat about some of the interesting things he's been saying. But I've just seen what Dutch and Bear have put into the title. I'm going to kick their backsides in a minute. Yes.
What are you talking about?
Next show should be awesome. I shall
Are you
hand the
talking
news over. His next. I
Your
think it's
connection sucking horribly, like it always does.
Hey,
Lewis.
to Lewis.
It's my wireless connection.
Hey.
Oh, and Lafayette has joined us, so Lafayette is here.
Yeah, sorry, my connection decided to shit on me when, here I am talking shit about Womble's connection. Mine just went to shitter also for a second. But
It
I'm
always
back.
happens just as the show starts.
I know, right? What the fuck?
It happened to me the other week.
So, quick thing off the, slightly off subject here. It was just for all of you guys who were watching. I was just, or who are watching, I was just watching the Women's FIFA World Cup and the Women's World Cup, and dude, the United States has a really hot goalie. Like, goddamn.
Boring.
Shut up, bitch. It's not my fault you're not into chicks.
Have you got
Yeah.
any relevant news for us?
If y'all are interested in hearing about me and Shock of God, I've always got that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Go on, let's have some gossip.
I challenged him to a debate a few days ago. He's pretty much ignored everything. He's not even acknowledging it, so that he can't really say that, oh, I won't do it, I won't accept. So he's a bitch in that aspect. He has resorted to childish tactics, like apparently accusing me of being gay. And no, seriously, I have recordings of him saying I'm gay. And apparently he is making fun of me for being overweight, which is funny because I will post a picture here in a second of what he looks like. And I can tell you that apparently he's fatter than I am.
You're not fat, you're just big boned.
Well, yes, I'm a naturally big person, but the thing is that he actually has a gut. So I'll upload that picture for massive lulz in a little while. Let's see. He said I was going to get sued by either him or somebody. That hasn't happened yet because he's
CBS board.
full of shit. I'm sorry, what was that?
Was it not the board host that he said was suing?
Yeah, the chat room host was going to sue me. That never happened either. Nephilim Free was also supposed to sue me for the video I made of him. That never happened either, obviously, because he has no fucking money to hire a lawyer with. Hold on. I'm posting this link here on the top above the chat thingy there. There you go. That is Shako. That is Shocky Boy.
Fuck.
I'm serious. That's actually him. So
Better hope they never get money, because this is America. You can sue anyone for anything.
yeah, but then again, you know, he's trying to like accuse me of, or he's accusing me of slander, which he would have no, you know, leg to stand on, because you actually have to fucking. I mean, you have to prove that whatever the person said was not true, and since I made pretty sure that nothing that I said there was a lie, you know, good luck. I'm actually begging him to sue me.
You know why he's calling you obese, don't you? Because he's pretty much the same guy as on Conservapedia, who posts all the
That's because
obese
he is.
atheists.
He is that person, dude. He's fucking. He's that conservative guy.
I'm pretty convinced myself.
Yeah, I know that's him, man. I am 100% certain that Shock and the user who goes by the name Conservative on Conservapedia is Shock of God. They are one and the same. I am 100% certain. No other person would say that. No other person would say popular. Popular. Nobody else would refer to him as popular besides himself. You know,
His videos barely scrape 1,000 views each.
exactly. I mean, dude, look at this. My latest video addressing a random Santa Claus looking motherfucker got 1,800 views in 2 days. His videos don't even get that much in their entire lifespan. You know, yes, if that's what it takes to be popular, then apparently I'm more popular than he is.
But
even
there's
so
no
much
reason
stuff.
why he won't sue you.
I'm sorry, what?
But I was actually talking to one of his followers who I was pretty convinced was him. I can't remember for the life of me at the moment the name of the YouTube channel, but it was on I think it was Food Juggernaut or video, basically calling him out, saying that basically he's not popular. He only has like a couple of hundred views per video. And maybe a couple that are on, 100,000, that are gaming videos, not actually any of his own work. And he was saying, this channel was saying, he's very popular, he's getting, look at these videos, he's getting hundreds of thousands. And I was like, yeah, but the rest of them are, on average, just at a quick glance, most of his videos are on 800 to 1,000 views. Which isn't that impressive considering the amount of subs he has.
Yeah.
Which again is, I suspect, is obviously sock accounts.
Yeah. Oh, the funny
like,
thing is that somebody that I'm pretty sure was a sock account of his was commenting on one of my videos, and we're like, dude, we know it's you. Just fucking fess up. Actually, pretty funny.
Yeah, there's another reason why he will not sue you ever, Lewis. Because
What?
he cannot sue you as Shock of God. He has to give his full identification.
Dude, I have his full identification.
I'm just saying,
that does,
It would
that doesn't
acknowledge
mean
who he is. So he cannot sue you without giving away who he is. And to file, he also has to put down his actual address on the paperwork.
Guys,
Facts.
we're
So I don't
getting
think
off topic. We're getting off topic.
Yeah.
Has anyone got any news for us? Any more news?
Well, that was the news, wasn't it?
No.
got
The
any
50
more?
questions for evolutionists.
Oh, okay. Also, on Lapkeen77's channel, he is uploading a collaboration effort, or a video series that has been a large collaborative effort by some YouTube, I guess you could say, some well-known YouTubers about evolution. And it's basically responding to that stupid ass question evolution campaign that whoever put it out there, where they have 15 straw men questions about evolution, and so basically, me, and a couple others, including Kitsch, and Answers in Books, and The Living Dinosaur, and many others answer these questions. And the video series is going up in installments every couple of days as soon as he's getting them finished.
Well, guys, once again, my father ruins everything, and I have to leave.
Oh, for fuck's sake, Yoshima.
Yeah, it's not my fault.
No!
Oh, no.
We're gonna lose
He
Yoshi
broke shit,
Pop.
and now I gotta go help him.
Oh.
So,
He'll be back
Ah,
though.
goddamn.
hopefully I might be back in, like, an hour, but,
Oh,
yeah, that's if. So, see you guys.
Yeah, I'll see you later,
in a
Josh.
bit.
See you later.
Bye.
Hopefully, see you in an hour.
Oh, no.
No more news then? Can we move on to the main topic of the day, or has anyone got any more news?
Fuck you, Blue.
Oh, fuck you, Lefty.
I do have one fewer roommate now, so that's good.
Yay! Can I come stay with you?
If you want, there's a spare bedroom now.
You have to pay rent though.
Anyway, I want to explain today's topic. We're talking standards or quality of evidence. When we talk about evidence, we're usually talking about observations made, whether in labs or in the field, which support a given explanation for a set of phenomena. However, when it comes to the evolution-creationism dispute, among others, public opinion seems confused as to what really is evidence and what isn't. Can there be, or is there any evidence for the existence of God? If so, is there any evidence as to which God he, she, it, or it is? Is the evidence for evolution strong enough? Is the evidence for creation or ID strong enough? We're here attempting to answer these questions, and I would like to start by discussing the proposed evidence for God. Is the Bible, or any holy book for that matter, evidence for a God?
No.
No. I'll start
No.
off by saying no, because that's trying to prove God by using the Bible is like trying to prove Superman by using a comic book. It's like, I mean, I was getting into this argument the other day, yesterday, with a moron from Shock of God's chat room, who he's one of those pseudo-intellectual people who thinks that because they can go on fucking Wikipedia and find out something that they know more than everyone else. So, hold on, I'll be right back, guys. Sorry.
We're losing people left and right.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. No, that was
bad,
just,
back.
I had to yell, shut up. I had to yell something
Have I?
real
I
quick.
think my connection's falling out. No.
Oh god.
Just general warning. My connection seems to be having a slightly dicky day, so I may or may not be dropping
My
in and out.
connection drops. It won't give any warning. It'll just cut out.
Yeah, that's the
It's
same.
Shock of
with
God,
mine.
damn it. We
We're
shouldn't
pretty
have
much
talked
becoming
about
Yes,
it like
magic
it's his
sandwich
fault.
show.
Anyways, like I was saying, so he's one of those people that thinks that because I can go on Wikipedia and look stupid shit up, that I know more than the rest of the planet. And he was asking me for because I was because I talk about history, because that's my area of specialty. That's what I know. That's what I try to stick to. So he's asking me a bunch of stupid shit, such as what is the historical method or whatever, and which is an extremely vague question, because it's not like there's a list like, okay, this is what you do, this is the historical method. And I'm trying to explain to him, and he keeps putting words into my mouth about like, I can't believe you deny the historical method. I'm like, did I ever say that? And it's just so frustrating talking to these people. So from a historical standpoint, being as someone who knows about history like I do, I can say that the Bible does not meet the standard of the requirement necessary to verify its authenticity. It's very questionably authored. It's very there's no none of the for one thing, the authors, even if they were legitimately written by who they say they were, which evidence points to the otherwise, the stories are extremely conflicting. It's kind of like, compare it to like a murder. If there's witnesses, a cop asks a bunch of people if their stories don't add up, it's going to be very hard to prove something, and that's what the Bible is. I mean, just on the Gospels alone. And for example, when Jesus' bitches, Mary Magdalene and whoever else he's with, they go to his tomb, and they find that that the shit's like empty or whatever. There's like one gospel says that there's an angel there. Another gospel says there's two angels. There's another gospel that says there's a young man in there. It's like none of them say the same thing. The virgin birth was only in two of them. You know, the stories don't add up. So historically, and not just that, but outside of the Bible, there are no other sources that would point to the Bible as being authentic or the stories in the Bible being legitimate. End of rant.
The things you pointed out, like the number of people who were present, are sort of. You know,
I would like to
are those
also
not
point.
are those not simply minor things? Can they not make that argument that these things are minor and didn't really matter in the whole course of the story? Surely the actual
It could be. You could definitely say that it was minor. You know, for example, the angel thing. But the virgin birth thing, that's kind of a doozy. You know, that's kind of one that you would think that most of them would, you know, mention or agree upon. And the fact is that we know from history that that there are other versions or gospels that were not added because they were decided on at the Council of Nicaea that they were not worthy of being in the Bible because they made Jesus look not divine.
Well, again, like, say, for instance, using your example, you had two people who saw a murder. They see things from different perspectives. They might get certain minor things wrong. They might get certain major things wrong. Someone can argue from the point of view that it doesn't matter. It happened. Has that argument ever been used before? Even if they're contradictory, it doesn't matter because these things get muddled up.
Well, the problem is also, though, that we don't have, is that there's, when you only have a few sources, such as the ones from the Bible, which is another problem entirely, that the sources in the Bible, we know that the Gospels were not written by, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And when they were written numerous dozens of years after Jesus was actually alive, if he actually existed, or if the guy known as Jesus actually existed. And the fact is that his, not just that, but there's, it's funny to me that it seems like Christianity is more like whatever. It seems like they follow Paul more than Jesus. It's like they've the letter to Romans or whatever. It's like Paul never even met the guy, yet he is supposed to know more about what Jesus meant to say than everyone else. It's just very funny and hypocritical to me.
Yeah, do you remember the conversation that the Stig and I had on his Skype before he rage quit and then uploaded tons of videos about how evil I was? He was arguing the point that there were 7 people writing about Jesus' life, therefore what happened in Jesus' life has been proven by the Bible. And I kept hammering on him, well, how do you know that those are accurate? How do you know that the eyewitness accounts are valid? And no matter what he said, they wrote like this, or how would there be 7 people writing like this? And I said, well, how do you know that they're valid?
Well,
he got so pissed off and he left. It's like they can't know because all they have are the stories in the Bible.
The problem is that outside of the Bible, exactly as to what you're saying, there are no extra biblical sources. As someone here types, what about extra biblical sources? One that Christians love to point to is Josephus. But the fact of the matter is, though, I know there are a couple, but the thing is that most of those are not accepted as being legitimate. For example, the one that a lot of Christians like to point out to is Josephus. However, many historians now agree that passage from Josephus written by Josephus was not actually written by him. It was written probably by a scribe many years after, or a few years after Josephus has actually died. Also, it makes no actual it doesn't actually mention a Jesus of Nazareth who healed the sick or did all that kind of shit. But it talks about the early Christian community, not just Christian or the Christ himself. They wrote about the Christians at that time, which makes sense that they would talk about this, this up and coming group of religious people. But they don't actually mention Jesus as they don't mention that, oh, he did all this shit. They just say, okay, well, there's these Christians who follow this dude named Jesus, but that's all they say.
I shall ask quickly, are there any Christians here?
Believe me.
Also,
Lewis used to be one.
yeah, Lewis used to be one, but he's not now.
Well, thank God for
Unless
that.
Unless he's some sort of spy or something.
Yes, I'm spying on you bitches.
There's one thing I just want to just quickly go back on is the inconsistencies, and I think it was Blue that said that they might be minor, or the Christians will make the point that these are only minor. Well, that might be true if they're approaching it as this book was man-made, but if like most of these debates take place with Christians that I'm involved in come from the angle that the Bible and especially the Gospels are written by inspired men, inspired by God. That kind of doesn't work.
Well, the problem with that is that you cannot disprove that. I mean, I can't disprove that these men were inspired or that they weren't inspired by God. I mean, I can't. That's a not a falsifiable statement. I can say that I'm being inspired by God to say this right now. You guys can't disprove that.
You can't disprove the Bible because
they aren't saying that they were. No, they're not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If they were inspired, there shouldn't be any contradictions. As in,
well, exactly. If they were being inspired by God, why is God purposely fucking with them? It's kind of like that picture of those pictures on Jesus where he's like, where Jesus is like looking over people's shoulders and fucking with them. He's like, on the internet, it was like there's an old lady looking at a computer, and he's like, go to lemonparty.org, and he's like, fuck off, Jesus. It's kind of like that. It's like if these people were actually inspired by God, then it seems like God is fucking with them because their stories don't match up.
Lewis, were you there that one night in Point Manzero's Boxley where I went to a private room with ABC 123 and a few other people?
I don't know. That doesn't sound familiar.
He was pretty much challenging my logic about the Bible, so I brought him in there and I kept asking him, what's his opinion on the Bible and all this stuff. And it came down to he felt that God knew everything, he had a plan for everything. He's a Calvinist that way. So I said, then why did God put a tree in the Garden of Eden that he knew Adam and Eve would eat from, thereby causing the downfall of the humans, thereby he had to wipe them out in a flood, and then later send his son there to die for their sins. He goes, well, that's what he wanted to do. I said, then why are you blaming man for what God did? God knew what he was doing would cause all this stuff if he's omnipotent. He said, well, that's just your opinion. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation after like an hour and a half of going back and forth. It's like, wait a minute, you just said all this stuff. I put it together logically, and now you're saying it's just my opinion and you're quitting. They don't want to think about their own beliefs. They don't want to think about the logic needed to believe in the stories. That's why so many people who grew up in Christian households and start learning about logic and critical thinking just start rejecting it. That's why atheists know so much about the Christian faith. It's because they were brought up in it and reject it.
Well, that's exactly the thing. I mean, that's exactly the reason why I left Christianity. I grew up being, like I've mentioned this before, I grew up as a Catholic. I was, my family was never overly religious. They never shoved it down my throat. They never like, read your Bible every fucking day. None of that. And I think that's the only reason why I stayed a Christian, because I never actually looked into it. It wasn't until I went to a private school where they made me, learn the Bible that I'm like, what the fuck am I reading? It's like, am I actually saying that I believe this shit? And it wasn't until I actually started, Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller on his show Bullshit said that, reading the Bible is one of the quickest ways to turn someone into an atheist. And you know what? He's fucking right, like 100%.
Fuck yeah.
Because when you read this stuff, it makes absolutely no sense. If you look at it logically, you wouldn't believe this if someone told you it happened. If someone you knew told, like, dude, I saw someone walking on water. You wouldn't believe them, or if you would, you're an idiot. But if you believe them without any kind of evidence or some kind of skepticism, there's something wrong with you, and because you're apparently way too gullible. And maybe I should ask you for your bank PIN number. But the fact that you would be willing to take on faith something that you would not believe if someone you knew personally said it to you is absurd. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Lewis, I think it was PZ Myers on his blog, I'm trying to remember exactly who did it, but highlighted a creationist rebuttal to why Russell's teapot is wrong. And he said, well, the difference between God and Russell's teapot is we know somebody had to have made Russell's teapot, therefore his entire argument is wrong. It's like, what logic do these people have?
Yes, because nobody could have made God. I forget where the who. I forgot.
Why do you have that at the ready, Colin?
I forgot who said it. But I forgot the quote now because that picture made me laugh. Who the fuck is that?
That's PC Myers at the
okay.
Museum.
Fucking legend.
Apparently kids were allowed to write it, but it just said kids only, and he put it on there, so it was like a bitch fest with the creationists for weeks. That, how dare he desecrate the museum by writing their dinosaur that's meant for kids.
There's another point that we appeared to miss out there. I've got this written down on my little script here. Yes, okay. I wrote a script. How about biblical prophecies? You're always hearing Christians saying, well, what about the prophecies that are told in the Bible that came true? Can they be considered evidence in any sort of way?
Actually, one of the prophecies some creationists brought up as proof that the Bible is knowing and is like scientific foreknowledge was the fact that there was a passage, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but it was the kingdom of Egypt, I think it would be divided into 4. And I looked at it and go, okay, well, this event happened in this year, and we have texts that only go back this far years between when the events happened and when the book actually was written that we're aware of. So how is that a prophecy if you write about something happening after the fact as though you were writing before the fact? He goes, well, the dates must be wrong. Again, it's just the logic is not there for these people.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing when I tell. I mean, the same thing that it's the same thing with the Bible, with the flood story. We have flood stories that predate the biblical flood story. And do you know why that is? It's because God, there's Colin already with the pictures ready. It's because...
He's bloody quick, isn't he?
Yeah, I know. It's because all of those fucking things, all of those stories from the same area, from the Mediterranean, the ones from the Bible, the ones from Gilgamesh, all of those are identical because they are all from around the same area, and they all have to do with the same event. It was a local flood around the area of the kingdom of Shuruppak around 2900 BC. And that's why they all coincide. That's why there's flood stories everywhere in that area, because it was a local flood that affected everyone.
Guess what happens once a year on the Nile?
There is supposedly a flood legend in the... Sorry, I've forgotten which culture. I think it's the one that the Incans took over from. Mayan.
Well, there's flood myths in almost every culture, or in a lot of cultures.
Yeah.
But the ones in the Mediterranean, such as in the early Akkadian civilizations, in the Sumerian civilizations, in the Israelite civilizations, they all are almost identical because they are all based on the same event, and they all branched out. I mean, for example, some of the Native American tribes have a flood story where a man and a woman survive by hopping on board a giant seashell. And these giant and there's these flood stories everywhere because floods tend to happen, and they're usually very significant events. I mean, if, let's say, for example, Katrina happened again at a time where there wasn't communication like we have nowadays, or anything like that, bear with me. I mean, that is a significant story. And given generations of time, if people are mostly illiterate, and that is, that story is spread through oral tradition mostly, the story is going to change a lot. And it's going to, and it'll maybe become fantastical and shit like that.
Yeah. Like I said,
As far as I'm
year,
concerned, sorry, Karen, Chris.
I was going to say, every year the Nile floods. And as part of my studies, I've also studied the history of Japan and the culture there. The Japanese creation story, they're on a tiny island about the size of California. They have no flood stories. And they're a civilization that has spoken word for as long as there's been written history. They didn't get language until the Chinese brought it, but they still had this oral tradition. There's still no flood stories in any of their creation myths.
That's pretty much the killer way to destroy the flood argument. Find a civilization that was around during that period of time that had no flood stories, because if you've got a worldwide flood, they're going to say something about it.
Yeah, and do you know why they don't have flood stories in there? Because there's nothing to flood in Japan.
Exactly. I think the Egyptians as well.
Except for nuclear reactors, apparently those are there to be flooded.
Almost every single flood myth has come from or was stolen from a civilization that had a giant river in it. Because back then, you needed the river
and
water
coincidentally, the cradle of civilization, where most civilizations started, was in the Fertile Crescent, where there are numerous rivers in what is near now modern day Baghdad, with the Tigris, with many other rivers that run through there that are prone to flooding. Not really anymore, but back then they were.
I was going to say, weren't the Egyptians around during the time of Noah's apparent flood?
I think so.
I believe they were. But the Egyptians managed to survive through an entire worldwide flood that lasted about 40 days.
Yeah.
Apparently unscathed.
Well, they had help from aliens, remember?
There's an idea that you may have just said this, was distracted by the troll in the chat room. The idea that the Mayan pyramids and the one on screen are so similar because of trading. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's through the seafaring culture thingy at the time.
Well, there's also the understanding, at least this is what I've learned from history of civilization, is that both cultures independently developed engineering. So, of course, they're going to have similar plans with what they have, because that, at the time, was the safest way to build things. Mm-hmm. And there's probably numerous other civilizations that tried to engineer things to appease whatever mythological beings they believed in, but they failed. We don't have evidence of their civilizations. Therefore, there could be other pyramids, there could be other ziggurats. We just haven't found them.
There's supposed to be quite a lot more under the Egyptian sand. They found it with radar thingies.
Well, one claim that I hate to bring up Neff, but one thing that he said that makes me like fucking rake my eyes out every time I hear him mention it. He says that all of the major ancient civilizations arose within 500 years of each other after the supposed Tower of Babel thing.
they didn't.
No, I know. That's what's so painful. It's like the Egyptians arose like fucking thousands of years before, like, let's say the Greeks. It's like, what are you fucking talking about, man?
And the
It's
Aztecs didn't rise until about 1300.
Well, yeah, but I don't think he'd mentioned them. I think he means more of the, the old world places. But even still, he's still wrong. And you try to explain that to him, and he's like, oh no, man, that's not right.
Does
And it
the
just
Egyptian
fucking
culture
pisses me off.
predate the supposed creation date?
Whatchamacallit? Earliest written accounts of any the earliest written accounts are those from Sumeria, and those date back to about 2700 BC. So, unfortunately, not. Otherwise, that would be pretty helpful.
Yeah, I've noticed something, Lewis. Nephilim Free has argued with Angry Womble about geology. He's argued with me about the history of linguistics. He's argued with you about history itself. It's like this man. Hey, that picture looks familiar. He argues with people who know so much more than him. We can show how clearly he's wrong, and he still goes on as though what he's saying is true and what we're saying is just made up crap.
I remember him arguing with me about polyploidy and morphological change.
Yeah, didn't he say polyploidy was a new species or something like that?
No, what I was trying to get across was that polyploidy provided new information, for want of a better word, in the DNA, where it duplicates the chromosomes and allows for more mutations, but you just wouldn't accept it.
Polyploid is a beautiful concept.
It is, I love it. I did an essay on it, got an A. Fucking nice. But anyway, taking this back to a more topical thing. Sorry, my voice is fucked up. Noah's Flood, is there real sort of any good quality evidence to support Noah's Flood? I mean, they're always providing stuff like fossils being buried in a sort of order that would support a flood. The Grand Canyon.
If we had Womble here, she could help, but her internet's connection sucks more cock than a porn actress.
Well,
so
here's further evidence that the Ark story just isn't valid. There's a guy, I think it was in the Netherlands, who just built what he thinks is a replica based on the sizes in the Bible. And he couldn't build it with just the materials that were available at the time. He had to put together steel barges for the hull. And it still isn't big enough from that size to house a few thousand animals in pairs. It's just not big enough. And then the Creation Museum in Kentucky, they're building their own, but it's going to sit on dry land. They don't even trust it to sit in the water, and they're building it strictly from wood.
Hey guys, I have someone who wants to join for the call a little while. He wants to add something about the pyramids.
Okay.
Sure thing.
Sure.
Add him.
I want to quickly just say before he gets on, if you look at that picture that's on Blog TV right now, it makes you wonder how that boat made out of wood could have survived that for 40 days and 40 nights.
Well, it's easy.
If you remove the boat, that picture is awesome.
Well, even with the boat, it's still pretty fucking cool. Oh, host of the call, please call the headless chicken person. I added that headless chicken. I added him to the call.
Headless chicken. There we are.
Just looking at the original picture, it makes you wonder how the hell the boat didn't just split in half.
Okay, so headless, you're on the call.
Okay. When who was mentioning about the pyramids and the engineering? I don't know everybody's voices here.
I think that was Bear.
Okay, Bear.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah, you're right. If you do develop engineering, even if you're staggering off in your development slightly, if you're going to stack blocks and you're building an artificial mountain, a pyramid is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
That's what these cultures were building. Mountains. They were building hills. And if you look at the and no one can really prove that Egypt got to South America.
What?
You can't really get there. You gotta follow the currents in the ocean. If you're too far south on the African coast, you don't get there. The occurrences basically mull you around.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone's going to have a chart stating that they got there, you're going to have some kind of written record or some other records other than just cocaine found on mummies.
Yeah, and most
as any
of the
kind of record left behind.
Most of the engineering feats that we have in Central and South America were destroyed when the Spanish came. The only ones we can still find are the ones that got buried or are impossible to get to even today. I mean, you have to take a long train ride just to get to Machu Picchu. And they only knew that Machu Picchu existed because one day the clouds separate on top of the mountains. Otherwise, you can't see it from the normal area where people live. I mean, it's just amazing how many things have been destroyed over the years that we could possibly find another civilization.
And if you do have a trade route between two cultures, like let's say just from Egypt to South America there with the Incas and the Mayas, how come the engineering technology is not the same? You'd be trading your technology.
Don't they use two different styles to cut the
two different styles of stone? The Incan and Maya stuff is basically just a natural rock, and you're shaping it to fit the hole. The Egyptians are cutting blocks and moving them. South America, in Incan and Mayan culture, you don't get the wheel being used. You only find it in child's toys. You don't find it as a pulley system.
Well, one funny thing that Neff also says all the time is like, these pyramids weighed, like hundreds, if not, like he says, I think maybe thousands of tons a piece, and that even nowadays with modern technology we wouldn't be able to lift them. No, they didn't. Each one of those probably weighs like at the most 4 tons, which granted is nothing, no small feat, but it's still doable with enough people. I mean, that's not that much. 8,000 pounds can be lifted by a couple of people.
And again,
you get a lever and a fulcrum, and you can do it.
Well, they also had rollers, and shit like that.
Or sleds.
Well, you're forgetting something too. There's an engineering feature that's directly where all of these buildings are in Egypt. There's a huge river.
Yeah.
It's sitting less than a mile away from most of these pyramids.
And that huge river also sits a few miles from your probably within a few miles of your quarries. You're not dragging this stuff very far. There's even evidence to show where the stones come with something like Stonehenge.
Oh, good grief.
People look at the distance from where the stone was taken to where the site is built. Well, if you put it on boats and take it around the coast and up the river, you do the same distance. You travel the same. You get to the same spot, but you don't have to drag it across the ground.
Yeah, but too many people want to be experts in something they know nothing about, and I have just a passing knowledge of history. And
some of it comes from a guy named Von Daniken back in the 70s who wrote a book called Chariot of the Gods. He basically went to the library, looked up a bunch of crap on ancient societies, ancient cultures, and then postulated on a bunch of it. And people have picked this stuff up, and they've ran with it ever since.
I just want to ask, what was Neff trying to prove when he talked about the pyramids?
That they couldn't have been that they actually, I don't know. Oh, I think he might have been. I don't know. Was he? I think he might have been implying some shit about like, I think it was implying that they had greater technology back then than we do now, or maybe it was some shit about that maybe the aliens did it. I don't know. He believes a bunch of crazy shit, so I don't know where he goes and back and forth nowadays.
There's just magic inside that man's head.
You use magnets.
Yeah.
Fucking magnets.
Yeah. That's what the headphones are for. It's the magnets in the speakers.
He thinks it makes him smarter.
Yeah.
Going back on topic again.
It keeps his brain from oozing out.
What other prophecies did we have in the Bible that apparently
personally, I think all these prophecies, especially the ones that relate from the Old Testament, and then then they're fulfilled in the Old Testament, are a bunch of bullshit. I mean, all that means is that the people who wrote the Old Testament, the New Testament, read the Old Testament. Oh shit, that doesn't make any sense. So they just made the stories fit. It's not that hard of a concept to understand. I don't know why I have to keep explaining that to people.
Well, a lot of the prophecy is about there being wars in the future or something.
Oh, yes,
Or
because
lots of
we've never had wars in the past, so it's...
Hmm?
I don't know, I mean... I think we're kind of done on the pyramid issue, so I'd like to thank Headless for giving us his input.
Yeah.
Thanks, Headless.
I can also give you input, too, on how old the Earth should be if you want to calculate with the Bible.
Well, isn't
yeah,
it 6,000 years?
Well, okay. James Ussher calculates it to around 4,000 BC, so that's about 6,000 years now. Sumerian kings are mentioned in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few of them. So if you want to take the Sumerian kings that are in the Bible, you have to take all the Sumerian kings.
Okay.
I've got a website here a friend of mine gave me, which it's off of Wikipedia. It's the Sumerian king list. The 4th dynasty of Kish. One of the kings ruled for 28,000 years.
What the fuck?
Okay.
That's
now,
a long
okay, are they really counting in years? Are they counting in base 60 like Sumerians did? Or are these counting in months? So the numbers can be a bit off. But if you do take them in years, like it states, then that is 28,800 years for one king. Some other kings get 43,000, 36,000. So you've got to add all these guys up. You're no longer at 4,000 BC anymore.
Well, yeah.
So people who want to believe in young Earth creation just shoot themselves in the foot with that alone.
Well, even still, though, anyone who believes that people can rule for 40,000 years are pretty fucking stupid too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's just the writing style from the time when these people were writing stuff. Big numbers looked impressive.
Well, yeah.
Bible's no different, really, is it?
Right. Look at the ages of characters like Noah, Abraham, and
900 years.
what's his name? The really old guy. Oh, what's his name?
C.S. Bear?
Methuselah.
Methuselah. What was the greatest thing that Methuselah did?
I think just live a long time.
No. He had a family.
Yay!
Abraham, he's the leader of people. He takes them out of Egypt and stuff. Noah builds a big boat and he saves No, Methuselah had a family, and he gets the longest age out of all the figures.
Fuck yeah!
He was rewarded with his big age because of what he did,
which was
which was having a family.
Yay! Well, that's I don't know. I mean,
Where's my 1,000 odd years?
That makes sense to me. I mean, shit. Makes as much sense as everything else in the Bible does.
It's just poetic gesture when you do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we getting Rumble back?
Who knows?
Hold on. Shall I carry on with the next question? Or next...
Do you mind if I stay in the call?
Sorry?
Do you mind if I stay in the call?
It's up to the host.
Who's the host?
Yeah, but the host of the host of the
fucking Blue always trying to shift responsibility from him. That's so typical British, you know. That's all they fucking do. It's like, oh, we don't want to worry about it. Let the colonies do it themselves.
I'd added a beer, let me go.
And then when the colonies step out of line, we'll bitch at them.
This is why you guys lost India and Mesopotamia.
Exactly. Then we'll have some.
Sorry, I'll stay until someone throws me out.
Then we'll have some skinny brown man lead a peaceful revolt against us, and we'll cave in anyways because we're bitches.
Oh, shut up, Leffia.
Instead of doing the American thing, which would have been to kill the son of a bitch.
Know your place. Right,
Are you sure it's just typical? Are you sure it's typical Brit and not typical musician?
Could be typical drunk.
That's both. I mean, fucking Beatles. Bunch of fucking pot smoking hippies writing about fucking love and all that kind of bullshit.
And submarines and walruses. Instead of having
a go, let's move on to the next bit, eh?
All right, let's move on to why Britain sucks and why it's no longer an empire.
I'm glad I'm in the call now.
Sons of
Bloody
Scotland!
Irish.
Sons of Scotland!
Left
I am William Wallace.
We're moving on to the next point now. Shut your face.
film proves creationism. They had planes. They also had a car in that movie.
Anyway, continuing. Taken from Ray Comfort, is creation proof of a creator? And continuing this point,
No.
is there anything that truly is irreducibly complex? And would such a thing be sufficient evidence for a supernatural being?
It
Well,
pretty
I'm
much goes
going
down.
to shut.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bear.
I was going to say, it pretty much comes down to the argument is if A, therefore B, because B, A exists. And you still need to get that logic in there. That's where did A come from? How does A fit to B? No matter how you go around. If you say, if something was created, it has to have a creator. Well, not everything created has a creator. Sometimes it just happens because of how nature exists. We can make water from hydrogen and oxygen. It doesn't mean it's created. It
I was
just
about
means
to say
that's
that.
the most stable way to do it.
You can
So
form
there's-
complex molecules just by having a mixture of chemicals.
Yeah, I mean, biochemistry just works based on the fact that there's certain electrical properties that are necessary for protons, neutrons, and electrons to coexist. And it's just more stable to do certain things. So when you have some energy or a loss of energy and there are just molecules in the right access to each other, then you're going to get the proper results there. You're always going to mix hydrogen and oxygen with energy and get water. It's always going to happen.
I just want to say the same thing, maybe in a different way, but the question presupposes that everything around us is created, when you have to really prove that this is a quote-unquote creation. Yes.
Mr. JMM999, can we make water? If we have hydrogen and oxygen, we can.
Yeah. Actually, we can make it in reactors too. Like, not fusion, the other one.
Well,
They can make it
I
from
suppose-
dehydration reactions as well.
I suppose the point goes to can you make hydrogen and oxygen atoms? Is that possible?
Well,
Well, if you
they're
can
experimenting with neutron bombardment of smaller. So we could probably make the oxygen from the hydrogen, but we couldn't make the hydrogen.
If you can isolate protons and neutrons, then you can combine them to... I mean, protons and electrons, you can combine them to make atoms. That's how they make the super heavy elements, even though they're really unstable.
Another point of the question was, if we did find something that was irreducibly complex, would that be evidence for a supernatural being?
No, it would
But
just
would-
show us where the baseline is.
But what is irreducibly complex? Is a hydrogen
Hello?
atom irreducibly complex?
Woo! We have a
Hello.
womble!
My internet disaster for the last 45 minutes seems to be over.
Fuck, and here the show was already, and here the show was, still being good. God damn it.
We
mean-
got on science, and now Wombo's
Left.
back.
Hold on,
Left.
guys.
The game.
I lost the game.
I fucking hate you so much, Womble.
I will cure you the game in a moment.
I am working on this. That is my strategy. Whenever I do that, I just laugh. Anyway, I'm taking this back off topic.
Yes.
We were talking about irreducibly complex. If we did
See, what
find
they-
something that was irreducibly
Yeah.
complex, would that be proof for a supernatural being?
What creationists often argue is irreducibly complex is something that's really, really complex, and they can't figure out how it would come together because there's so many different parts. I wouldn't say that's irreducible because we can take those parts apart. Everything they've trotted out that's irreducibly complex, we have simpler versions of it. We have the parts of it working as other things. So they're not irreducible. They cease to be what they are if you take it apart. So therefore, their whole argument is how could something that didn't work that way come together to work that way? So that wouldn't be a sign of a creator. That would just be a sign of nature overcoming obstacles just by doing what it does best.
I think the whole point of the irreducibly complex argument is basically to say evolution can't possibly have done this, therefore it can't have formed on its own.
But
Therefore,
don't you understand? It's nature overcoming those obstacles is just God. Don't you understand? It's God working through this.
I got a question for the idea of the irreducibly complex. In what little design work I've ever done, the whole point behind a good design was to do it in the simplest manner possible. To use the fewest number of parts for the structure you need.
Right, but then
to use the least amount of material.
Yeah, but by that argument, humans are not irreducibly complex as far as blood clotting because there are simpler ways to blood clot that we see in the animal kingdom that have a few fewer proteins.
Okay.
Pufferfish.
Well, I'm just looking at the whole idea of design. That if you want it, if God exists and the complexity of something is the proof of God, then God is not a very good designer or engineer because he's made something so complex. A good designer and engineer makes something simpler and efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But see, they're not arguing based on logic. They're arguing based on what they believe, and what they believe is human beings are the end-all of what creation can do. We're perfect. And when you point out the imperfections we have...
perfect.
Yeah, if you point out the imperfections, they go, no, that's just the way he's created. Everyone's unique. It's like...
Really? So hang on. Can I...
For that.
I have a personal bugbear against that. So it's perfect for my body to have rejected part of itself. It's perfect for me to have an autoimmune version of a thyroid problem. How can that be a perfect design?
Yeah, it's perfect for my immune system to be overactive and attack my intestine.
Yeah, well, it used to be perfect, but then Eve ate an apple and it fucked her up.
See,
do you know the main cause of hernias in men? Do you know the main cause of hernias in men?
I've thought of something that's not appropriate for over the air.
The reason men get hernias more than women do is because the testes form in the abdomen during, I think it's during the pharyngulate stage of development. Over time, the testes migrate down to where they end up. And because they've had to migrate, they go through this canal, which has actually made it more likely for men to get hernias because it makes it weaker.
So the reason I'm horny right now is because of that?
No, that's not why you're horny.
Hernia.
Oh, hernia. Oh, well, this is embarrassing.
So men get hernias because we have a void or hole where our testicles dropped out of.
Pretty much.
Well, this is embarrassing.
Well,
now the entire internet knows that you have an erection.
Yes.
Well, dude, I told you guys earlier that the goalie for America's women's soccer team was really fucking hot. So no, I don't really have a boner. Right.
God, how many trains have you derailed today, Lewis?
Everyone. It depends how big his bone has been during the day.
Well, last Thursday I walked down the street with a massive erection. There weren't any survivors.
We were talking about pyramids, and Lewis just goes, "Hey, those pyramids remind me of a three-titted woman in Total Recall."
Right.
What the hell, Lewis?
Sex. That's all you think about.
Well, I think that's because most of us are single and horny.
Yeah.
Anyway, standards of evidence.
Yes.
Yeah, we're getting off topic. We talk about penises again. Always seems to happen.
Again, you mean I missed the first time you were talking about penises? This isn't
We have
even
how
right.
many gay men and straight females in the chat right now? It's gonna happen.
Actually, to be fair, we've only got one gay man and one straight female, or one female in here, point blank.
Well, let's balance it out by talking about boobs.
Anyway, back to the topic.
What was the topic?
Standards of evidence.
Where exactly were we in it? We're talking about.
We've just been talking about
complexity
and how if we're such a perfect design, how can some people have overactive immune systems that just start randomly attacking parts of their bodies?
I think it was Headless Chicken who said it. Something about why he had to make us so complex. If there was a god, why did he make us so complex when he could just made us out of like a goo that doesn't mess up, and just because he can do anything.
Well,
can't
the
he? Why does he
idea
have
of
to
the
make us
spirit
so
is we
complex?
are simple. It's like when we're in our spiritual form, we are pure. We don't have all these problems. It sort of invalidates the concept of hell because we've got no body to have problems with when we're all spirit. And that's the idea of us not being made
How
of
do you know
problems,
something
that
can't
the
go wrong?
body's just an experience.
So are
Yeah,
we in
even
hell at the moment?
reincarnation. Yeah, we're in
So-
hell. But life being about the experience is... We're going to do it all again eventually.
I don't quite
just
get you.
short-circuited the atheist.
Have we addressed irreducible complexity? The fact that it's bullshit.
Yeah, that
Incorrect. The Dover trial. Was it the Dover trial? It was.
the Dover trial.
'cause
yeah.
Kitzmiller.
Yeah. And I think
Again,
one of the main problems was...
the courts don't
Sorry?
prove anything. The courts
No.
don't prove anything. That's what they always say. Which of course
Until
is
they
true, but still.
Yeah. Until they side with them, then it's like, oh, the courts prove this and this.
Yeah, the
As I
courts
said-
are
as I-
evil and the work of Satan kind of thing.
So
As I said
folks,
to,
news thing where they were slating someone on gay rights with Supreme Court ruling. He just chucked it right back at them from a previous trial.
What was it?
Sorry, that was soft.
As I was saying to what's his name, Paul Taylor from Creation Today. I was talking to him by email today, and because I was actually taught intelligent design in my school, believe it or not, and I was made to discuss the pros and cons of evolution. I told him in email maybe it's a good thing to have the whole question evolution thing in schools, writing down pros and cons, because when we did that, we wrote down all the pros, which was quite a lot, and when we came to cons, we thought about maybe 3-4 things, and then we had them explained to us, and we found out that the cons were in fact bullshit, and that there were no real cons. Maybe that would be a good thing in schools, as long as they don't as long as they don't side it with, oh, there's this other theory. As long as
the teacher knows what he's talking about.
That could be a major deciding thing, though, couldn't it? If you've got a bollocks teacher, then you're not going to learn anything. The thing I want to happen is, list a bunch of cons if you're a student, but then get the teacher to explain why they're not cons, or send you to a source where it'll explain why it's not a con. I just don't want.
think of anything off the top of my head that would be a con to evolution.
Yeah, but when you're a student in like as we call it, secondary school, or I don't know what you call over there, you don't know much about evolution. What I don't want them doing, that would be fine if they just questioned evolution that way. What I don't want them doing is getting all these cons, not explaining them, and just saying, well, there's another alternative that can explain those, intelligent design. That's the thing that's controversial about the whole question evolution thing, is that they want to introduce a completely new subject into the classroom. Was that a bit off topic?
Nope.
No, it's standards of evidence.
But they're going off I remember during the time of the Kitzmiller, I think it was the Kitzmiller trial, or the Dover trial, sorry. In religion, we were talking about creation and evolution. But the teacher who was a brother, I can't remember his name, but I was thinking, he's going straight into this, intelligent design, all this. But he just basically said, this is what the scientists actually say, and if you're going to disagree with it, you have to actually come up with, some actual evidence, and don't just point to the Bible, because the Bible is not a science book. It's not even a greatly worded book, which is kind of surprising to me, because I was expecting, just the real religious argument when we got a kind of a fair and balanced view of it. this is the science. This is what the scientists are saying.
If I might
Don't let
chip
anyone
in,
tell you it's different.
Oh.
Oh, sorry, that's the end of my little thing.
First of all, can I just apologise for being so late, and hello everyone.
Hello,
Hello,
sound of silence.
Tyrannosaurus Alan.
The trouble
You
is
missed the
that
discussions on Cox.
oh, never mind. I'm sure you can fill me in later. Oh dear. That's not what I meant. But I don't know whether or not this has really been discussed, but this is on the subject of quality of evidence. The trouble is that people will say that the science or scientific experiments support, let's say, the mainstream view being evolution or old Earthism or whatever it might be. But the trouble is that there are plenty of people like Ian Juby, like the clip that I used on the trailer, who claim to be performing experiments. And although they don't publish in peer-reviewed journals, they still claim that they have science supporting their case. The trouble is that how do we allow people who are perhaps too young to be fully acquainted with the scientific literature, how do we make sure that they know which science they can trust and which science they can't? Because to them...
You can't say to a kid, trust these people and don't trust these people. No matter who's right or wrong, you can't just go to a kid and say, don't trust these people.
But the trouble is that we know that any sane geologist knows that Ian Juby's experiments, as detailed in that video, I could provide a link to the whole video if anybody's interested in watching, but those, anybody who knows anything about geology will know that those experiments are utter crap and that they are worthless. The trouble is that we can't just say that to a pupil offhandedly. They really ought to be able to know why it's crap. Otherwise, it is just a case of they go away with the idea that if there's an experiment that supports it, then it's true, regardless of how good or bad that experiment is. So how on earth do we get children, or say secondary school pupils in their mid-teens, who haven't yet got the experience of working with the scientific literature, how do we make sure that they know good from bad?
You can't. Unless you put in an extra course into the curriculum, which would take well, the curriculum's already a pretty fragile thing. I mean, there's always controversy about... Sorry?
I was going to say, could you just show them a more credible experience that points to the experiment that points to the contrary?
I think...
Well, they already do, but...
I think probably the best way to do that, and it's the way I found out to get reliable sources, is to actually do research. Not something obviously terribly difficult, but something that you would have to go use the source, use internet, books, journals, etc. I think that will probably be a really good way of not only teaching an interesting topic, but also learning to get your good sources from your bad sources, and getting hands-on experience in research. As I know, that doing my own research now, your sources are extremely important.
Again, you could teach that in the schools, but you'd have to sacrifice another part of the curriculum.
Or it could be part of a curriculum. Using it to
curriculum's already tight things. When I was taught biology, there were so many different subjects. It would take a couple of lessons on even the biggest subjects. If you keep adding this sort of stuff into the curriculums, then soon enough you're going to have to kick something else out of the curriculum, and students going to university aren't going to be as well equipped.
Yeah.
When I went to university, the first thing we learnt was the scientific method. It gets taught, but it just gets taught at a higher level, a level which a lot of students don't actually get to achieve, because a lot of them don't get to university. But then again, those are not the people getting into the scientific community and making these sort of judgments. You'll find that all the creationists are simply just political talking heads.
But
and
I would say have a part of the exam, have a part of a continuous assessment part of the exam of research. Like in our geography in Ireland, there's a good part. There's about 20% done for fieldwork and research, as part of the overall mark for leaving cert or the A levels. It would be the equivalent of the A levels or the SATs. I'm not sure.
Well, we don't have that in England.
I thought there was fieldwork in geography or I might be getting that confused with somewhere else.
It's definitely not in any of the sciences because I took all 3 sciences. We're definitely that, and we actually were taught intelligent design in biology class, which was a fucking waste of time because everyone just laughed at it. No joke, everyone in class just laughed at it.
Yeah,
and it was a complete waste of time. But again, it's all politically done, isn't it? It's not down to what the science. It's down to.
Although I would ask, how was intelligent design sold at the time? Because, of course, you could imagine in a Bible Belt school, they would say, there is this intelligent design view which believes that everything was created by God, or there's evolution which says that we came from a rock. I mean, an appeal to ridicule is far too easy to produce in either case. So, was the idea generally laughed at because everybody in that classroom considered
the idea
was
presented. The idea was presented as this thing. We had a picture of Mount Rushmore, and the teacher said this was created by human hands. Compare that to nature, which is far more complex. Maybe there was a god, and it was basically just introduced to us like that, and we didn't take it for a second, really.
All right.
I don't know what's so different about the US and the UK, or at least Cornwall. But the attitudes are a lot different, I think.
Well, there are some academies in the UK, part of a group called the Vardy Group, and they teach. No. I shit you not. There is creationism being taught in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Vardy academies.
We usually copy off the UK.
Haha, the stupidity is spreading from America.
Apparently there's a lot, like Answers in Genesis is like prominent in the UK, but I've never really seen any of them.
I've not seen much of it. I know
But Answers in Genesis only really appeals to people who are already in the belief system, so they're not really trying to get noticed by the rest of us.
Apparently they're quite big over here though.
Well,
yeah, well, there's 64% people said they believe God had something to do with us.
I mean,
I know most of the people in my school, in my high school at least, they completely accept evolution. It's just that they think that evolution was the way that God created everything in the world, and they think that the 7 days of creation were just metaphorical.
See, I respect that
I just want to say
position.
quickly, that picture on Blog TV now, there's a lot of truth to that, because I saw a video yesterday where there was a classroom whose textbook was literally a Bible, a science class. I saw a video of that yesterday on YouTube.
hello.
No,
How much of my stuff came through before I got my connection wobbled?
Very little.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Cool.
Your connection's fucked. Your connection's fucked.
Nutshell. There's a guy that I've got a copy of. Yes, I know that. It's not the connection. The connection's fine. It's the router. I've got his book, which I'm going through as a debunking project, and
And one was gone. I can tell you, while we're waiting for you to get back, the book in question.
And
Unrelated.
James gone.
Oh, the suspense. Someone does not want
Unrelated
to find
to
out about that
evolution,
book.
I just caught a shiny seal on Pokemon Live.
Is Blue there? Because if not, I think England might have just been nuked or something.
I am here, barely.
Oh,
I just want to point out something really fast here. It's just that
He's taking a piss now.
Great joke, Chris.
Wait, is he just trying to fuck with us, or did he get cut off too now?
Of course he's just fucking with us. It's not like the book is cursed, and if you mention the book...
We might have said it so quickly we didn't hear.
It's kind of like when you're talking about Candlejack, and the next thing you know...
Yep.
What's Candlejack?
If you say Candlejack's name, he'll come and take you away.
Is that
just
not
fucking stop it?
Beetlejuice?
No, Beetlejuice
It's
is if you say
Freakazoid.
his name 3 times. Candlejack, if you say his name, the next thing you know, you'll.
Now, Womble, do we have
This joke's getting a
Can we
little
stop,
long.
please?
do we have
Yeah.
Womble back now?
Long like
No,
it's
not
long
yet.
like my penis.
No.
Let's not get started on penises again. Let's get back on topic.
But that's the fun part.
After I saw the goalie for America's team, god damn,
By the way,
she's hot.
Blue, before you move on, I just want to point out that in the chat channel on Blog TV, I've offered to point out to somebody in there who's spouting off about his faith that I can show using his own logic how illogical his arguments are, and he's refused to take me up on this. It's so typical of these people that you can show them what they're arguing doesn't make sense, and they wonder why atheists reject religious anecdotes, pretty much is what they are. It's because we can sit there and go, A, B, C, how do these fit together? They don't. They go, well, that's your opinion. That's all that matters, I believe.
Again, to Christians, everything's down to opinion. Because, face it, believing in the Bible is an opinion, and they usually base their entire beliefs on the Bible as evidence, which is their opinion. So, everything to them is opinion. It's not based in fact, it's not based in reality.
I don't know whether or not we've talked yet about irreducible complexity.
Yes.
Yeah, we have talked. We have.
I don't know if we
Why, do you want to address it?
There was something that I just wanted to say about the idea of irreducible complexity is that in my mind it's simply it's perhaps not unfalsifiable, but it's unprovable, simply because the way I see it.
It's not falsifiable at all, because every time you say this is not irreducibly complex, they can say, oh, this is, or this is, until...
Well, yeah, I realise that you have to disprove every single example that they can come up with, but in that respect, it is theoretically falsifiable, though practically not. All I would say is the analogy that I've used for some time, and I can't remember, it might have been Qualia Soup used this argument, but human-built structures like arches and buildings and things like that, if you take away any block in an arch, it will fall down. So therefore, it is irreducibly complex. That doesn't mean that it had to be put together all in one stage. It's basically, in the case of an arch, you would put up scaffolding, and in the case of something like bacterial flagellum, there may well have been proteins in the past which interacted with it and supported it while the constituents were evolving, and then they became redundant and are removed. So you cannot claim that something has always been irreducibly complex. And the other example that I use is that if you take the starter motor out of a car, it won't turn over. That doesn't mean that cars have always had starter motors. They originally had crank handles, then they had a crank handle and a starter motor, and then they had the starter motor. So because you can't tell what used to be there in the past, you can't tell that it's always been an irreducibly complex system.
And I can tell you from living in Ohio, which has had high unemployment, that you can take the engine out of a car is still usable. You will find people living in cars that have engines there.
True.
Again, it's completely unfalsifiable. Well, unless you did take every object in the universe and the universe itself and say this is not irreducibly complex and prove it. It is completely unfalsifiable.
But it's one of those things whereby, in my mind, no quality of evidence in support of an irreducibly complex system would be sufficient, simply because you can only see what it is now, you can only test what it is now, you can't test what it used to be. That's what I had
maybe
to say.
In a few years we might be able to. Who knows, maybe in a few years. I mean, everything in the human body, including bacterial flagellum, is formed by DNA or genes.
Potentially, yeah.
If we were really good, if we became so good at reading genomes that we could see how individuals, like objects, like of the cell, were formed over time.
Or a time machine. That's what I'm pinning all my hopes on, is a time machine.
No. I don't think that's going to happen.
But we have to be able.
A little blue box.
You have to be able to sample the bacteria without, causing the butterfly effect and upsetting all history after that point. We'll
to
work
the point where...
but what if it already happened in our history, and this version of history is the result of us already doing that?
That is the other possibility, that you cannot change history.
Or at each point we've gone back in time and done something like that, you've created parallel universes where in one thing you sampling it hasn't done any effect, and then in the
Yes,
other parallel universe.
Yes, I would like to do a time travel show at some point, but my personal what I'm all pinning my hope on is that you cannot change history, that everything has happened that or has already happened and will already happen. You see what I mean?
If someone in the future were able to time travel, they would have we would have seen them now.
That is true. It would be common knowledge, I think, by now.
Anyway, we're getting off topic again. We're getting off topic again.
Oh, I was going to say something.
All right, have one quick say.
I was going to say, unless they went back and created a separate universe where they never create a time machine.
That's just
shut up.
Anyway, finish off creationism. Is there any convincing creationist evidence at all, at any level?
Not that I've seen.
I think that, there are so many things like young Earth proofs which are valid providing you accept the assumptions on which they're based. They are forever criticizing things like radiometric dating for being based on assumptions, many of which aren't really assumptions at all. Things that we assume that radioactive decay rates happen at a constant half-life, and we have no evidence to suggest that doesn't happen, and we think we understand the mechanisms behind it, and so therefore we can be pretty much certain in that fact.
They've exposed all these radioactive materials to super high temperatures and almost absolute zero, and there's all that sort of stuff, and they haven't found anything that's changed it so far.
But then you come to I was going to say, but you come to young Earth proofs, things like the salinity of the oceans, and they say the salinity of the oceans is increasing. If you scale it back, it would reach zero in, 20,000 years or whatever. That is, of course, relying on the assumption that salinity is increasing at a constant rate, and that it has always increased at that rate. It hasn't oscillated, it hasn't gone up, it hasn't gone down in the past, that the whole of the seas didn't used to be fresh water at some point. If you accept their assumptions, then they are convincing evidence for a young Earth. But there's no reason to accept them. I think that's true of a lot of creationist arguments.
I'm not convinced of a single bit of creationist argument yet, but has anyone heard anything that sounds in the least bit convincing at all? I was taken by the dinosaur and man footprints at one point, but then I found something that said it was fraudulent. All that sort of stuff.
All the ones that I used to find convincing, I've just found evidence that shows that they were wrong, but for the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't found any.
All
I frequently come across it, even when I hear people like Neff. Occasionally, I hear one of their arguments that's total nonsense, but I can see it in a way that I could apply it. But then when I run the logic, it doesn't get past the truth versus belief thing.
Yeah.
So it's evidence of something, but not necessarily my God.
With things like the human footprints amongst the dinosaur footprints, the thing is that, in some of the most famous examples, somebody has come forward and claimed they are a hoax. I know, I created them. And we are taking it on a certain amount of faith that they are telling the truth.
But they lied to start with, so how can we trust them?
Well, exactly. And, they could just be paid stooges in the big evolution conspiracy and whatnot. What sort of does it for me is the complete lack of subtlety behind these arguments. There are only two pieces of fossil evidence that creationists try and prove, which are either evidence of humans and dinosaurs together or evidence of humans in the Cambrian. As far as they're concerned, there's only the Cambrian and only the Cretaceous as the only significant periods in the past. It's always one or the other, trying to find something that is not supposedly contemporaneous in those two periods. If it really were the case that humans survived through the Great Flood, we would be finding human evidence in just about every single geological epoch. And it just seems to me that they're putting on a rather poor show of creating this illusion.
Yeah, but it's a bit strange that if every fossil was created in this one flood, why there's a pretty much perfect pattern of less complex creatures from the Cambrian period on the lowest strata where we find fossils, going up to amphibious creatures, up to reptiles, up to mammals and birds. There seems to be this perfect pattern with no outlier whatsoever. And yet we're supposed to believe that this is all perfectly arranged by a single flood. Surely if there was such thing as this flood, there'd be just at least one bunny in the Cambrian strata.
Right. A comment on the flood. If you expect a global
Cutting out one.
the Japan tsunami, help that.
We can't understand a word you're saying, Womble.
Put it in
And she's gone.
chat. Put it in Skype, and she's gone again. I think she was talking about looking at modern day flood data and just seeing that you. Admittedly, it's all going to be the same. It's going to be living organisms that are there today, but you see the way that things are churned up, and you can't accept this argument, like the fact that only simple creatures lived near the bottoms, and all the more complicated creatures were able to run uphill away from the floodwaters and things like that. Other things about them being buoyant and sinking at different rates, but I simply don't accept that. Things like the fact we don't find a single bunny anywhere in the Cambrian. There's also the question of what on earth are these human footprints doing if they're supposedly in the middle of a sedimentary sequence to which we attributed Noah's flood. They can't have been running from the flood because it was already depositing sediment. They could have been running around underwater. And the same thing goes for polystrat trees. Creationists keep putting out polystrat trees and asking how these form. They should be denying the existence of polystrat trees absolute, because a lot of these trees are in situ with their roots intact in the upright position or the life position, and so they can't have been growing in the middle of this flood on the seabed.
I don't think that's what they're trying to say. I think they suggest that all these layers were deposited at pretty much the same time, and this tree managed to
Not fall
keep
over.
its ground strong enough to withstand this huge tidal wave.
But the trouble is that they're claiming that a lot of the strata below it were also formed in the flood. Now, some of them have come up with these ideas.
That's a good point.
That tree trunks were floating on the surface and they got heavy with water and sank and punched their way through several layers of strata. Now, for start, you try that experiment today and you try and prove to me that it's feasible.
You'd liquidate the wood.
Yeah, but as I say, a lot of them are quite obviously were alive, fully rooted to the ground and in the upright position before they were buried. Not all of them are. Some of them are upside down. None of which is a problem if for something like a flood sediment where trees are turned all over the place. But and I mean the same for all plant fossils. Plants can't run away from a global flood. So the fact that we find them rooted to the spot all the way through the sedimentary record doesn't gel with the idea that they were all buried in one go.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't thought of that.
See, plant fossils are far more powerful than animal fossils. I've always said this.
I'm not interested in plants. Plants are gay. Another argument. I'm sticking with that. I'm staying with it.
We'll argue about that after the show. Carry on.
Yes. Well,
there are worms.
Another argument that keeps coming up as evidence for a god: common design, common designer. That when they say
common design,
for example, when we say find a transitional form, and we find a transitional form, for instance, I had an email exchange with the creationists today. I said, here's a transitional form. It's got homologous structures that have been shifted, migrated from the reptilian lower jaw to the mammalian ear. And he said, homologous structures simply prove that there is a common designer. Another point, even when you show a transitional form, they still don't accept it. But the point is, common design, common designer. They seem to think that if something's homologous, it's not proof of evolution, it's proof that there's a common designer. How would you approach that?
Come on to that and say that it might, the argument might, and I'd be very, very. I think it's Lewis.
I was typing a moment ago, but sorry.
I am typing, but my mouth speaker's miles away from my keyboard. Well, not miles, but
okay. Anyway, we'll carry on now.
It might fly if he had maybe one might, and I really stress that might fly. If he only had maybe one transitional form. But we have a series of transitional forms showing this gradual change. That doesn't really fly with a common designer, unless this designer is quote unquote a prick and just wants to deceive us. But it's that beautiful transition from, I just can't think of an example right now, but it's a transition between a primitive or common ancestor to humans to a modern day species. It's not just a similarity, but it's a pattern, if you know what I mean. And the same thing goes for anything like this for common designer. Evolution isn't going based on similarities, but a pattern. For example, genes and phylogenetic traits, they're not based on similarities, but patterns. I hope if that makes sense to everyone.
Well, where common design sort of falls apart is we have analogous structures. There are multitudes of eyes in the animal kingdom. I mean, we have compound eyes, we have oblong eyes. They even have the pineal eyes with lizards. They're just different forms of the same thing, but they have completely different designs. We also have different wings. So how is it common designer, whatever, is proven when we see homologous structures, but when we see analogous structures, they don't go different designs, common designer. It just completely falls apart when we look at the evidence.
Think about...
Go
on. Are you going?
I was going to say the same thing with molecular data. We have things like the similarity of, say, hemoglobins between humans and apes or whatever, and they say that's the mark of a common design. When you produce hemoglobins that are produced in plants, which are completely different, again, they are analogues, they will point at that and they'll say, that's not evidence of common ancestry, and we'll say, no, but it's not evidence of common designer, nor did we claim that it was evidence of common ancestry.
As far as I'm concerned, the whole common designer argument falls apart when you find something that's uncommon. Like, because if you find something that's uncommon, then the argument is pretty much useless, because if you're saying common design, you should be implying that everything has a common design. The argument would be more valid if everything was similarly designed, but everything's not similarly designed.
There's also the fact that if it is the same designer, he's terribly unimaginative. It was one of the things that Aaron Ra pointed out, is that all animals which have guts all form in the same way, and I think it's something to do with the mouth forming from a wall of cells. It sort of caves in on itself, and then that goes straight the way through to the anus, but I forget exactly how it forms, but it happens exactly the same in all forms of life, from sponges up to human beings. And really, I mean, an omnipotent God surely shouldn't be confined to one individual design. If we are to assume that it is the same designer, then he quite obviously didn't put any real thought or effort or creativity into it. He got with one idea and stuck with it, and that was good enough for him.
So it should be good enough for us.
I think have we got half an hour left?
Yeah.
Do you want to start taking questions from people in the in Blog TV? If anyone's got any questions.
Okay.
Why would homologies be evidence of a designer? Homologous structures be evidence of a designer? Chilled tea asked.
I mean, the only kind of thing I can think is if God decided I want to create a load of animals which have 6 jointed legs, in other words, insects, and that he just kind of got one blueprint and then he sort of modified each one to the same structure, just because it would save him time having to draw 6 legs every time, which obviously is a very strange thing for an omnipotent being to do. So I don't honestly see how you can justify it as evidence of common design, because I say it's terribly uncreative, and of course it's claiming a certain amount of knowledge of what God was doing, and nobody can know what God was thinking.
It seems to be an insult as to if there is a deity, then it would be to use this kind of this label him as an unimaginative, lazy designer. It seems kind of more of an insult than an actual argument for his existence.
They would probably use the excuse that he chose the most efficient or the best working design and just worked around that.
True, but if you look at nature, sometimes these designs can be hilarious, just laughable.
Yeah, but then they would say, well, you never saw anything else, so for all you know, this is the best design.
But then, if he really stuck with the most efficient design and ran with it for all cases, why did he decide to give both humans and chimps an identically broken vitamin C synthase gene? It's not there's no efficiency, doesn't even come into it. The gene is completely non-functional, and it's completely non-functional in the exact same way. You can't claim that there was any kind of intelligence behind that.
The Lord works in delirious ways.
eBilly99 says that Pasteur proved that abiogenesis can't happen.
He says he has proof, does he?
He says that Pasteur proved it.
Pasteur proved it.
That's not abiogenesis, that's spontaneous.
Billy was trolling, so we don't have to answer that question.
Okay.
All right.
Well, if he is trolling.
The chat.
Use trolling.
Is there any sufficient evidence for evolution, by the way? Well, we haven't really talked about evidence of evolution yet.
Well,
is the evidence for evolution good enough? Quality? Standard?
Tide comes in, tide goes out, therefore evolution.
Is wrong.
Yeah, case closed.
Yeah.
The thing is,
I love that Bill O'Reilly bit.
All you have to do is just go. If you go to PubMed and just search for de novo genes, you can see numerous papers that are published every single month where people are locating brand new genes that weren't in their parents. So we have evolution going on just by studying medicine. We can see what it is. I mean, there's just new genes forming all the time. A lot of them are very harmful because they're reactivating something that was taken out, or they got it from a virus, or it's just a part of the gene was removed, or something was inserted so it doesn't even work properly anymore. So we can see that going on, but a lot of them are just neutral. They're just a shift slightly of another protein that works exactly the same, just in a slightly different way.
And we can even use evolution to, for example, the evolution of citrate gene, or I just want to pimp out my own research. One of the experiments that I'm doing is, well, hopefully I'm going to do, is try to force a population of microbes to work at a colder, optimally at a colder temperature to produce methane. And that's used, and the only thing I'm using is to force them to mutate using a mutagen. And that is maybe evolution in a played at full speed. if that makes, if that explains it well. I don't know if it does or not.
The other great thing about evolution is that it is testable, and a lot of creationists will argue against this. I'm currently working on a video series whereby I'll be teaching you how you can test evolution yourself at home with nothing more complicated than a computer with access to the internet and the ability to count. But you can study, say, for instance, the anatomy of different species, or the morphology, or the number of bones, or whatever it is, and you can say, I suspect that chimps will be most closely related to humans, and then, I don't know, reptiles, and then amphibians, fish, and so on. And you can set out a tree of life as you see it based upon whatever you choose as your starting point. Then you can choose a completely or seemingly irrelevant piece of evidence, like something like genetic similarity or whatever, and you can compare the sequence identity of, say, a certain gene or a protein structure or something like that, and what you actually find is that it does well, providing you do enough, if you collect enough data to make sure that you don't get any anomalies, you do find that it matches the tree that you had originally planned. Whereas if you are an advocate of creationism, then presumably you think that nothing really needs to be related to anything, so you wouldn't expect to see any kind of a pattern. There's also things like drug discovery, where an extract from yew trees was found to be useful for treating breast cancer, and so scientists looked for tree species that were most closely related, and they picked on one, I think it's the sugar pine, and lo and behold, an extract from that is found to be useful for treating leukemia. So evolution does have practical applications, and it's something in that sense that can be tested.
Try to turn Nephilim free. That remember he made that video saying that evolution has no medical benefit and went on about antibiotic research. Though I hate to bring up Nephilim free because A, he doesn't deserve to be mentioned, and B, he creeps me the hell out.
At least he shows us the dark side of what people like me could be. Faith overriding reason.
What I don't get is when creationists try to disprove evolution by saying it has no practical applications. Firstly, it's wrong. Secondly, how does it disprove evolution?
Yeah, I think they're not saying it as a disproof of evolution. I think they're just saying that there's no point in learning it because it doesn't do us any good. And of course, there is a point in learning it if it is true, and it does give us practical applications.
Can we get the cartoon version back on Block TV? Because that photo is just creepy.
Yes, I think many of our audience would like to sleep tonight.
Can we have Vengeance Dad instead?
I'll tell you what is creepy. Salad fingers.
You've been
Yeah, but that's a creepy in you know this isn't real sort of way.
I found him free as salad fingers.
Oh
It
god.
probably is salad fingers. Salad fingers is Nephilim free in the future.
There you are, Colin.
It just gives you the shakes, doesn't it?
There you are, Colin. I've just put it in the Skype chat. I think the audience will appreciate this. I can't believe that nobody spotted this similarity before I did, and I think now somebody has now put it in a video, which rather taken away my little moment. But Nephi does look like the Vengeance Dad meme.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get it up in just a second. Sorry, where were we? I was not talking about salad fingers.
Colin, put a picture of salad fingers up on. In fact, better.
Where does salad fingers fit on the evolutionary tree of life? I mean, is he plant or is he human?
What the heck is salad fingers?
It's a really creepy
cartoon. It's one of the more popular Flash things online. The kind of video gaming, Legendary Frog, that kind of community.
Just basically this very creepy person who likes collecting rusty spoons and severely suffers from schizophrenia and split personality disorder.
Oh, but it's awesome to play as him on the Newgrounds Heroes games, where you're playing characters from all the popular...
Hey, salad fingers.
Yeah, he's actually one of the more powerful players in the Newgrounds Heroes game.
You talk about that one that's kind of like Super Smash Brothers?
Yes.
It's a fun game. I remember that. Played that for hours.
My favorite character is Neem, the one that commits suicide. Because I said in the chat yesterday how I've got a Chinese girl in my head. She sort of parallels that, so that's why I play her.
Yep. Fun times.
It's months since I played stuff on Newgrounds.
Oh, awkward silence.
Awkward silence powers activate.
Is there another part of my script that I forgot? Is there really a dichotomy between evolution and creationism? If such is the case, does proving evolution wrong is proving evolution wrong good evidence for creation? And even if there is no dichotomy, would disapproval of evolution still make creationism the dominant theory, for want of a better word?
No, because the steady state universe was much more believed in creationism for most of the past 2,000 years. Mm-hmm. Like the world has always been this way is basically the belief. So that would take precedence over creation.
The thing is, whether or not there's a dichotomy, I mean...
It's not a dichotomy, there's other options.
The only real fundamental belief, I suppose, of creationism is that God created, I suppose, the world and supposedly life of some description. It doesn't necessarily have to be all life in its current form. It doesn't have to be a young Earth. So there's no reason. I mean, it's the kind of the theistic evolution viewpoint whereby you accept common ancestry, but you don't think that evolution happens by natural selection. You think that it's guided secretly by God. So there isn't necessarily a dichotomy there. I think obviously the generally accepted view of creationism is one of a young Earth and of life being created.
It's not
in its
really
current form.
secret. It's not really believed to be a secret that God guides it. It's more that it just happens over such a long time.
Yeah, I don't mean secretly then. I don't mean secretly then, but perhaps undetectedly or
too slow for us to notice.
Yes,
which we can prove wrong just by pointing at the evidence.
I mean, yeah, well, you cannot. I don't think you can disprove that God might be controlling it.
No, but we can disprove that he's doing it too slow for us to notice.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily know. I mean, a lot of the theistic evolutionists, I don't think they would argue that it has to happen slowly. But so no, there isn't really a dichotomy as such, but it's certainly not true to say that disproving evolution is proof of creationism. Of course it isn't. It's the same way as saying that, it's like saying that disproving the existence of Zeus is proof of God. Of course it isn't. There is an infinite number of suggestions for gods, just as there are an infinite number of suggestions of our origins.
Yeah, but I really think Dawkins needs to rewrite that speech, because I've just heard it so often that it's irritating. Because I see his point, but can he not list other gods next time?
Okay, then. We'll do the Great Green Alcohol Seizure next time. I personally, I would be very, very happy if it were true that the Great Green Alcohol Seizure were the creator of all things.
Oh no, it's turtles all the way down.
That would be why the Earth rests on the back of 4 turtles.
No, it rests on the back of 4 elephants.
Oh, sorry. No. On the back. Oh, I'm sorry. I never read Discworld very much.
There's only one god, Kira.
That's very bold of you to make that statement. Are you going to justify it?
Kira.
Of course not.
Kira Knightley.
That would be a goddess.
I'm taking that now. And has anyone seen Death Note?
Yes.
No. I reckon Richard Dawkins is God. I reckon Richard Dawkins is God, and that Ammonite he's holding is his messenger. See, you can throw out any bullshit, and disproving one doesn't prove another.
Kira isn't a very good god if he can be killed by bullets.
You don't know, but you have to go out and prove now that Richard Dawkins can be killed by bullets. I maintain that he can't.
Just to respond to eBilly99 in the chat, if he's paying attention, Unicron is also a god. Primus cannot be the one true god. Transformers.
Yep.
Actually, neither of them are the one true gods. They are the only gods that exist in this universe, but they're the children of an older god.
That reminds me, I heard an interesting theory. You guys know the Pixar movie Cars?
Yep.
Unfortunately, well, I haven't seen it, but
people were saying that the world that they live in is pre-war Cybertron.
Nice.
That would be completely awesome.
What the fuck?
We're deviating here slightly, aren't we?
Yeah.
I've got an interesting question. Oh, Kitch, you want to say something?
No. I was just saying, I read everyone up.
In politics these days, you know how politics has such a great effect on what's taught in the science classrooms. Does the quality of evidence even matter to them when it comes into what's taught? And no matter how much evidence is put up for evolution or against creationism, does it really matter at the end of the day?
Oh, can I
to what
answer
is
real
taught?
fast?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Teach
when you
what
talk to,
evidence is in order for us to advance
Yeah.
our knowledge. Because we need to survive this planet. We want human life to survive longer than Earth.
yeah. When you argue with creationists, you keep hearing the same things. Like they'll bring out somebody's quote about how evolution is wrong or whatever, and they go, well, this person is an expert, this person has a PhD, this person has tons of degrees. I go, well, 99% of biologists who have the same degrees say that evolution happens. And it's like they don't seem to figure that the basis of evidence, the weight of evidence they're presenting, is far overwhelming counter to their argument. It's the same with, if the Bible says it, it must be true. Well, the journals that are peer-reviewed and have how they came to these conclusions, what methods, you can repeat these methods, what results they got, all say that this happens, but they go, well, the Bible says this, therefore all of that mountainous evidence is wrong. So they don't have a exact measure for what they want evidence to be. It's just, if it agrees with them, it's evidence enough. If it disagrees with them, there's no amount of evidence that can sway them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Taking the words right out of my mouth. That was almost what I was going to say.
There was, it was when Dawkins was asked, what is, if you could come up with a single sentence to disprove creationism, what would it be? And he said there wasn't really a sentence, it was more the sort of, the genetic tree of life was the best proof. But then he said, the trouble is that it's a redundant question because a lot of creationists just don't listen. And he quoted an acquaintance of his who has a legitimate PhD in geology from Harvard University. He said, if all the evidence in the world pointed to an old Earth, I would be the first to admit it, but I would still be a young Earth creationist because that is what Scripture teaches me. And it is, I mean, there are some cases where you just have to say, right, I give up, this person is a lost cause, there's no point trying to acquaint them with the evidence.
Another thing...
It's amazing the links that the human mind will go to reaffirm its own beliefs.
Are the flat earthers as persistent as the young earthers?
Well, what do you mean by persistent? I mean, they're still around.
Yeah, they're still around, but are they as difficult to actually discuss things with?
I don't know.
I've never
When you show them if you show them pictures that the Earth is round, they'll say that they're doctored. If you show them mathematical calculations, they'll just say, well, you did the math wrong and stuff like that.
What if you take them on a plane from Japan to LA, to New York, to your London, to Moscow, back to Japan again?
They'll probably argue that you subtly turned the plane.
I think there is.
What if you take them out into orbit and just then just subtly open the airlock?
I mean, there are certain ways of disproving a flat Earth. Some of them easier than others. I mean, potentially.
Well, the horizon is pretty much the evidence of a round Earth.
But there are things like this is rather difficult to physically do. But you could tell them, go to any four places around the world. They have to be suitably far apart, and you need to measure very precisely the distance between all permutations of those 4 points, and then try and get a flat piece of paper and draw a scale drawing of that. And what you'll actually find is that it is physically impossible to do, because it is impossible to accurately represent a curved surface onto a flat piece of paper. No matter how you project a globe onto a flat map, you always end up distorting things. Another one was one of the earliest proofs done by the ancients was that 2 obelisks from the north and the south of Egypt, both of which were the same height, gave different length shadows on the same day. Now, flat earthers will argue that the sun is at an angle somewhere above one of the obelisks, and so that still accounts for the different length of shadow. But really,
how close do flat earthers think the sun is?
Well, that's the thing. If you accept that the sun is the distance that it is at, then the only way in which you can explain those obelisk shadows is on a round Earth. But if you're a flat earther, then for all you know, you think that the sun is sort of 50 feet up, and that it's just like a big light bulb. So, but as I said, there are certain ways of. I mean, I think that some of the Flat Earth Society websites, I think at least one of them has to be a hoax, because some of their arguments are things like, if the Earth is round, how do the people on the bottom stop falling off? Which just beggars belief.
Yeah, but it's like when creationists
we need Desert File
if there
to
are
answer
humans,
that.
why are there still monkeys? It's the same sort of thing. It's just a stupid
Why are
question.
there still Europeans if they're Americans?
Yeah.
But again, even if we did show them, they would find some way of just denying it. Either just like completely ignore it, or just ramble over you and try to stop you from talking, like Nephilim 3 usually does.
There's something interesting in sci-fi is a flat universe a lot of the time. I mean, the only sci-fi I've actually seen recently is the scene in Serenity where they come down at an angle, and the scene in Deep Space Nine where the Klingon ships come down at an angle. Every other sci-fi I've seen, all the battles are taking place flat, facing each other. There's no one coming up from the top, no one coming up from beneath, no one coming in at an angle, nothing.
Yeah.
So I could believe in the flat universe, but the math doesn't show it.
I wouldn't know. I don't watch sci-fi.
Speaking of that, remember I don't know if anyone's seen Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back.
Woo! Yes.
Remember when they were? Remember when they were on Hoth, and they were escaping. They had an infinite amount of directions, and they chose to go into the
path of the Star Destroyer.
Yes. Like, it's space. You have an infinite amount of directions to flee. Even if it's just on flat, like if it just shows a flat kind of escape route, if that makes sense. There's still the opposite way. I just never got why they chose to go straight towards them.
It could have been a distraction for other ships escaping, but then again, why rationalize sci-fi?
True. This isn't
I think. Sorry, carry on.
Just one more thing on that. We are dealing with people who thought that The Phantom Menace was a great movie to release.
Hey, I think The Phantom Menace was a great movie. Not so fond of the other two second ones, but
I just like it. I just like it because Darth Maul was voiced by Peter Serafinowicz.
Stop talking about
Darth
Star
Maul
Wars.
had a double-bladed lightsaber.
Stop talking about Star Wars. It's bollocks. We've got I think we have one last question, which I think is quite a suitable one to finish on. Why does it matter what people believe?
Because we need to advance legitimately. We need to advance, and therefore we need to know how to improve.
I think it's kind of, I forget who it was that said nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. And I think it's part of the reason why it should be taught. It may well be the case that it doesn't matter to a lot of people, but if you are somebody who is going to study science to an advanced level, you have to be acquainted with this idea because it underpins so much of what we have discovered since then. So it's possible to be a geologist and be a creationist if you're only concerned with, analysing the mineralogy of things like that. If you're determined on something like stratigraphy, however, then obviously it does matter. So it's perhaps, again, as I say, to a lot of people, maybe it doesn't matter. But the trouble is that if we end up going back to more primitive superstitions, then potentially you are going to stem the advancement of science, and that way lies destruction.
I would say that it doesn't matter what an individual believes, as long as if they're going to take action or teach it, they have to have good reasons for doing so. It's not merely the belief itself, but it's the rationality behind that belief, that I would say, and to a certain extent anyway. If it's something, if it's a belief that, I think someone in the chat, I can't remember who, says that, for an example, if God told you to kill, if someone said God told me to kill prostitutes, I think that would be that'd be a terrible belief, and that's what we counter.
Anyway, I think we'll have to end it there. It is in Britain anyway. It's 10 o'clock. Thanks to all the people who came to Blog TV. We've had quite a lot of people today, which is always nice to see. thanks to our guests. We had Glee Me, Yoshimo, CS Bear, Josh Liam, Sound of Silence, Carl Mason, Kitch. Who else do we have? We have Angry Womble, we had Lefiad. Everyone else I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, but it's now time to end the show. Thank you all for coming, and come back next time.
And thank you, Colin, for holding everything together.
Yes, thank you, Colin.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming.